I'm honestly just so frustrated and confused that I need outside perspective because my entire family seems split down the middle and I feel like I'm losing my mind. My parents divorced when I was 12. I'm 17 now, and for the past 5 years, my mom has been the constant in my life. She's not perfect, but she's been there for every late-night cry, every awkward middle school phase, and every high school disaster. My dad, not so much. He moved out, started dating pretty quickly, and for a while it felt like I only saw him when it was convenient. Fast forward, he remarried about a year ago. His new wife, let's call her Karen, I know, cliché, but it fits way too well, is 35. She's younger than my mom, dresses like she's still in college, and has this permanent smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. At first, I really tried. I told myself, okay, she's not my mom, but if she makes dad happy, I'll figure out a way to get along with her. Except from day one, Karen has been pushing this weird narrative that she's my new mom. Not stepmom. Not dad's wife. No, she wants me to call her mom. Out loud. In front of other people. The first time it happened, I was sitting at the dinner table, and she casually goes, "So, do you want to call me mom now, or later?" Like it was just a switch I could flip. I laughed because I thought she was joking, but nope. She doubled down, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "I think it's important for us to establish this bond early on." I remember just kind of freezing, looking at my dad, waiting for him to say something. He didn't. He just looked down at his plate, like suddenly the mashed potatoes were the most fascinating thing in the world. So I muttered, I already have a mom," and tried to brush it off. But Karen didn't brush it off. She made it her personal mission. The next few months were exhausting. Every visit, she'd try again. Sometimes in this syrupy sweet voice, like, "Sweetie, can you call mom over here?" Other times it was manipulative. "If you really cared about your dad's happiness, you'd call me mom." And sometimes it was just passive-aggressive digs, like, "It must be confusing to have two moms, huh?" Meanwhile, my dad, silent, like a background character in his own marriage. Things came to a head last weekend. Dad wanted us all to have this family dinner, so I went over to his house. Karen had cooked this massive meal, and the whole vibe was clearly staged. Candles, fancy plates, the works. About halfway through, she puts down her fork, looks me dead in the eye, and goes, "I think it's time you stop resisting. You need to accept that I'm your real mom now." The room went silent. Even my little half-brother, he's 3, their kid together, looked around like he sensed the tension. I could feel my hands shaking under the table. I wanted to stay quiet, to just swallow it, but something in me snapped. I said, probably louder than I meant to, "You're not my mom. You'll never be my real mom. Stop trying to replace her." The second the words left my mouth, I knew it was going to blow up. Karen's face crumpled like I had just slapped her. My dad immediately jumped in, yelling that I was disrespectful and cruel. Karen ran off to their bedroom crying. Dinner ended in chaos. Now my phone's been blowing up for days. My dad says I owe Karen an apology. Karen texted me this long paragraph about how I broke her heart and how I'm selfish for refusing to embrace the family. My grandparents on dad's side are saying I should just play along to keep the peace. Meanwhile, my mom is furious, not at me, but at dad for letting this happen. And I'm stuck in the middle, wondering if I am the bad guy for saying what I said. But here's the kicker. After that fight, I overheard something in their house that makes me think this isn't just about Karen wanting to be called mom. I'm not even sure I should repeat it, because if I'm right, this is about something much bigger. I didn't plan to overhear anything. I was in the hallway picking up my charger because my phone battery was hanging at 3% and Dad's bedroom door was mostly closed. I only stopped because I heard my name. You know that reflex where your spine goes straight and your ears get big? That was me, frozen by the laundry hamper with someone else's sock draped over my foot like a weird prize. Karen's voice carried through the crack. "She's almost 18. If we don't lock this in now, the home study is going to look bad. We told MS. Fletcher, there's already bonding." A pause. Then Dad, lower, tired. "I can't force her to say it." "You promised me." Karen shot back, words landing one by one. "You promised we'd be a real family. That means she calls me mom. That means she cooperates. This is our chance, Mark." "Our chance for what?" he asked, and there was this scrape like he was sitting on the edge of the bed. "For you to get hurt again? Because pushing Avery is how we get hurt again." That was the first time I figured out what I'd been missing. This wasn't only about me. There was something else hanging over them like a storm cloud, and they were building this family dinner set to impress someone. Someone who did home studies. Someone with a last name and a folder. Karen's tone softened and went small. If Ms. Fletcher thinks we can't parent a teenager, she'll doubt us with a toddler. With a preschooler. You know what they said about Theo's daycare incident last month. Transitions are hard. Stability is crucial. This is our stability. My name again, like a pebble tossed against glass. Avery needs to show it. She needs to call me Mom. It's one word. One word that felt like a rope around my throat. There was a rustle, and I backed away from the door so fast the laundry basket clipped my shin. I didn't want to be caught eavesdropping. I ducked into the bathroom, ran the tap to fake normalcy, stared at my reflection in the mirror. My face looked unfamiliar, cheeks flushed, eyes too wide. I tried to breathe slow, but my breath came out tight, clipped. A knock. Dad. You okay, kiddo? Yeah. I lied, because that's what we do. We lie to keep the peace. On the drive home later, my brain replayed their words like a stuck song. Home study. Ms. Fletcher. We told her there's bonding. Why would they tell a stranger I already call Karen Mom? And why was my cooperation connected to Theo? My brother was 3. He didn't need me to call someone else Mom to be safe. When I got to my mom's place, 2-bedroom condo, slanted light in the evening because the windows face west, a plant she keeps accidentally killing and then reviving. She took one look at me and put the kettle on. We have this deal. She doesn't push, but she's there. So we sat at the little kitchen table with 2 chipped mugs and the hum of the fridge, and I told her what I'd heard. Mom's mouth tightened like she was holding something in her teeth. A home study is usually for adoption, foster care, or certain custody situations. She stirred her tea clockwise, then like she was untying a knot. Did your dad mention anything? No, nothing. Just dinner and dessert, and me being cruel. She blew out a sigh that wasn't quite a laugh. Of course. Then, more gently. Avery, this isn't about whether you're cruel. You told someone a boundary. That's not cruelty. But their timing, that concerns me. I think they lied, I said. Saying it made it real. The words felt heavy, thick. I think they told someone, like official someone, that I already call her Mom. Mom blinked and set the spoon down, the tiniest clink. If they misrepresented facts on a home study, that could be serious. But we don't know for sure. I want to know, I said. My voice surprised me. Not loud, but solid. I want to see what they're telling people about me. Mom studied me. Do you want me to call your father? No, not yet. I want to ask him myself. The thought of Karen on the phone made my stomach twist. She's good at crying just enough that you feel like the villain. I texted Dad, can we talk just us two? No, Karen. He read it immediately. Those little dots taunting me. Then nothing. 15 minutes later, tomorrow at lunch? Dottie's Diner, 12:30. Dottie's is the place we used to go when I was little, after my Saturday soccer games. Red booths, a waitress who calls everybody sweetheart, and the world's weirdest tuna melt that Dad swears is an acquired taste. I sat in the booth opposite him the next day, the vinyl squeaking under my jeans. He looked older than usual, like the tired in his voice had moved into his face. I didn't waste time. What's the home study? He flinched, and in that flinch I saw the truth. I hadn't been wrong. He set his coffee down with both hands, like a person surrendering. You heard us. Yeah. He stared at the mug for a heartbeat. Karen's sister has been struggling. Without saying too much, because it's her story, there's a little girl, 5 years old, who might need a home soon. We told the caseworker we're willing. They're doing a preliminary home study in case it moves quickly. I pictured a little girl. 5. Big eyes, hair in messy pigtails she did herself. My chest pained. 5 is not an age that should be a chess piece. Okay, I said cautiously. That's huge. Why not tell me? Because we didn't want to scare you before it was real, he said. Then, softer, because the last time something like this came close, it didn't happen, and Karen, she took it hard. Pieces slotted into place, ugly and satisfying like a puzzle you don't want to finish. Karen had been let down before. That didn't excuse her pressuring me, but it colored it. So, I said, keeping my voice calm, where do I come in? Dad met my eyes and didn't look away. The caseworker asked about our family dynamic. Teens can be the most challenging, they said. My eyebrows shot up and he winced. Not you specifically, Just in general. They want to see stability. They asked about the relationship between the child and step-parent. If there's mutual respect, if there's affection, if there's bonding. He didn't say it. The word hovered like a bee. Mom, did you tell them I call her that? I asked. He didn't answer. His silence answered for him. Something hot pricked at my eyes. Not tears exactly, more like heat. You lied about me to a caseworker? I said you sometimes do. He said quickly, too quickly. I said it's evolving. I wasn't trying to. Avery, I panicked. Karen was looking at me and MS. Fletcher was scribbling notes, and I. And now, I said, hearing the flatness in my voice. Karen's trying to make it true. He rubbed his forehead like he had a headache, and we were the aspirin he refused to take. It was a bad call. I'll fix it. Then why was she saying you promised? Why is the word an ultimatum? Because she thinks if it looks like you reject her, it'll count against us, he said. And she's not wrong that caseworkers look for cohesion. But she is wrong to push you. He sounded like a man at the bottom of a hole calling it a hill. I looked at the waitress filling water at the next table, at the child in a sticky t-shirt trying to balance a fork on his nose, at the snow globe collection lining the diner's back shelf. Ordinary life kept going while mine tilted. Dad, I asked, is there paperwork? Anything with my name on it? He hesitated. Just the family questionnaire. They asked who lives in the home and how we identify our roles. How you? I stopped, swallowed. I want to see it. I want to see what you wrote. He didn't agree. He didn't refuse. He said, I'll ask Miss Fletcher if we can share it. Like it was his to gatekeep. When I got home, I sat on my bed and stared at the popcorn ceiling until my eyes hurt. My phone buzzed. Karen, I am so sorry for pushing. I just want to love you like my own. Please understand my heart. Then, a second later, when the evaluator comes next week, could you please try? For Theo. For our family. It would mean the world. The whiplash made me dizzy. She apologized and then asked for the exact thing. It felt like hugging someone who slips a note into your pocket while your arms are around them. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. Finally, I put the phone down and went to make a grilled cheese because the only thing I could humanly do was feed myself. The butter sizzled, bread went golden, and I stood there flipping it like it was a life raft. That night, a thought I'd been avoiding crawled out from under the bed and sat on my chest. If they're willing to lie about this, what else would they say? What if they weren't just telling Ms. Fletcher a story? What if they were writing me into it? It didn't help that when I dropped by Dad's the next day to pick up a sweater, Karen was in the dining room with a neat stack of papers, a highlighter, and a binder labeled Fletcher, Home Study. She looked up like I'd caught her in pajamas. Hi, do you have a minute? I'm just grabbing my. It'll be quick, she said, already sliding a paper across the table. It's a routine family profile. We included you. We just need you to glance and initial that you agree with how we described our relationships. My gut clenched. The page had a grid. Name, age, relationship to applicant, bond/attachment. Next to Avery, 17, they had typed, daughter, strong attachment to both parents, emerging attachment to stepmother, primary maternal figure in father's home. My name kin to a lie. Primary maternal figure. I looked up slowly. Karen, I don't agree with this. Her smile trembled, but stayed. It's just words, she said. That's syrup creeping back. It helps them see the truth of us. They want to see titles. Words matter, I said, feeling the floor tilt again. You want me to initial that you're my mother? I want you to acknowledge reality, she said, voice thinning. I take you to appointments. I show up at your recitals. I make you dinner. I love you. I didn't ask you to do any of those things so you could cash them in for a name, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough that she flinched. I appreciate kindness. But my mom is alive. She's here. She's my mom. Her eyes glistened. Why is there only one seat for a mother in your heart? That's not fair, I said, because it wasn't. This isn't musical chairs. But the word means something, and you don't get to demand it. She pressed her lips together until they went white. You're making this harder than it needs to be. This is about Theo's future. About a little girl who needs a home. The evaluator is coming on Tuesday, and if she senses hostility. This isn't hostility, I said. This is a boundary. We stared at each other across the wood grain of the table. Then she did something I didn't expect. She stood, walked to the credenza, and pulled out a second folder. You want honesty? She asked, voice shaking. Here. Inside were copies of forms with sticky notes. One tab read family declarations. Another read affidavit of parent-child relationship. My stomach dropped when I saw my name bolded at the top alongside Dad's and Karen's. Section 3. Describe the relationship between the minor child and the step-parent. The paragraph underneath started, Avery refers to Karen as Mom, within the home and in public settings. You told them my voice broke on its own. You wrote this. Mark wrote it. She said, like that helped, like his pen changed the ink. I edited. It was aspirational. I put the pages back like they burned. My hands were shaking hard enough to make the paper rattle. I'm not initialing anything. And I'm not going to pretend on Tuesday. Her face hardened. Then you're choosing to sabotage a child's chance at stability. No, I said, jaw tight. I'm choosing the truth. I turned to go, and that's when I saw the last tab in the folder, the one half hidden under the flap. Petition, step-parent adoption. My name again. This time alone, centered on the line marked minor to be adopted. My fingers went cold. What is this? Karen's eyes darted to the doorway, like she was checking if Dad was about to appear. It's a draft. Nothing filed. Not yet. Not yet. It would simplify school forms, medical decisions, family benefits, she said, fast, like she'd rehearsed. It would make us legally what we already are. You're practically my daughter. I never agreed to this, I said, voice thin and too far away from me. You can't adopt me without my consent. You're 17, she said, and her tone went clinical. It depends on the state. Your father has joint legal custody, with his consent. My mother would fight you, I said. I would fight you. She looked at me, hurt folding into anger. You're intent on punishing me for loving you. I didn't trust my mouth not to say something I'd regret, so I left. I walked, not ran, into the yard where the hydrangeas those two planted were trying to decide if they were blue or purple. I sat on the porch step, put my head in my hands, and listened to the sound of my heart in my ears. Above me, the sound of the front door opening. Dad's voice. Avery. I didn't look up. Did you see? Yes, I said. I saw. There was a long, bare silence, and then he said, we need to talk about Tuesday. The evaluator is coming at 10. I laughed then, a small humorless thing. Oh, we'll talk. I stood, wiped my face with my sleeve, and met his eyes. Because if you try to make me a prop in your little performance, I'm bringing the truth to the stage. He paled. Avery. No, I said, feeling something inside me lock into place. I'm done being polite. And as I walked off that porch, phone buzzing again in my pocket, I opened the new message and froze. It wasn't from Dad or Karen or my mom. It was from an unknown number with a county area code I didn't recognize. Hello, Avery. I'm MS. Fletcher, the evaluator assigned to your father's case. I'd appreciate the chance to hear your perspective before Tuesday. Would you be willing to speak privately? I stared at the text until my vision blurred, the whole future of Tuesday rearranging itself in front of me. Because apparently, I wasn't just part of the performance. I'd been invited to speak. I don't think my hands have ever shaken like they did holding that phone. Not when I took my driving test, not when I auditioned for choir, not even when I told Karen at dinner that she'd never be my real mom. That text from Ms. Fletcher felt like a trap and a lifeline rolled into one. I showed it to my mom that evening, my voice all stuck in my throat. She read it twice, then set the phone down like it was delicate. If she's reaching out directly, that means she's trying to get a full picture, Mom said. That can be a good thing. What do I even say? Hi, I'm Avery, and my dad's wife wants to adopt me against my will. Mom didn't laugh. You tell the truth. Calmly. Clearly. No dramatics. No name-calling. Facts. We sat there with a pen and a yellow pad. I wrote bullet points. Boundaries. The pressure to use Mom. The dinner incident. The papers I saw. The adoption draft. The fear that I'd be used as proof of cohesion. Then we added the part where I do, in fact, care about my little brother and that hypothetical 5-year-old. Because I do. I'm not made of stone. When I texted Ms. Fletcher back, I kept it short. I can talk tomorrow at 5. On the phone. She responded, that works. I'll call you. Thank you. The next day at school, I carried around this awareness like a full glass of water balanced on one palm. People bumped and talked, and a kid dropped his tray in the cafeteria, and everyone cheered, but my world was one pulsing point at 5 p.m. I texted Dad at lunch. Ms. Fletcher reached out to me. He took 20 minutes, and then, good. That's good. I couldn't tell if he meant it. I didn't tell Karen. It felt like walking into a test without telling the person who tried to write your answers for you. At 5 o'clock on the dot, my phone lit up with a strange number. I stood in my room, closed the door, and answered. Hello, Avery. This is Ms. Fletcher. A voice said, professional but not cold. Thank you for taking a moment. Yeah, I said. My mouth was dry. I have things I need to say. I'd like to hear them, she said. And to be clear, this conversation is confidential. I speak to each household member individually. I consider all perspectives. Some nervous humor bubbled up. That's a lot of perspectives in our house. I've noticed, she said lightly, and something in me unclenched a notch. I told her the facts. I told her about the pressure, about the way the word mom had turned into a marching order. I told her how much I love my mom, my actual mom, and how I don't want that relationship erased to impress a stranger. I told her about the dinner, about Karen's binder, about the phrase aspirational appearing like a sign on a cliff. I told her about the draft petition. I told her that part with my voice shaking. She didn't interrupt. Occasionally there was a little sound to show she was still there. When I finished, there was a second of quiet. Thank you, she said. That must have been difficult to say. I'm sorry you're experiencing pressure around your identity and familial language. That is not appropriate. The words slid into my ear like ice on a burn. Not appropriate. Someone official said it. Regarding titles, she went on. Caseworkers don't require a teenager to call a step-parent mom or dad. We assess warmth, respect, and boundaries in whatever terms are authentic to the family. Forced labels can be a red flag for us, not a point in someone's favor. My knees actually went weak, and I sat on the edge of my bed. So me not calling her mom won't make you think they're unstable? Refusing to adopt a label is not the same as refusing a relationship, she said. Your father and his wife should know that. They told you I already. I cannot disclose statements made by other parties, she said, which told me everything anyway. Okay, I said. Thank you. She paused, then added, there are circumstances where guardians seek step-parent adoption for ease of decision-making. However, at your age, your consent would be required, and best practice dictates it should be child-driven. Any sign of coercion is taken seriously. I almost laughed because the relief came out sideways. Oh good, I said, because I was starting to feel like a piece of furniture. I'm hearing you, she said. Before Tuesday, would you be willing to write a brief statement about your preferred terms and your boundaries? It would help me redirect the conversation if it veers into pressuring you. Like a script? Like a map, she said. For all of us. After we hung up, I sat very still for a long time. Then I wrote. I wrote that I respect Karen as my father's wife and as Theo's mother, that I'm willing to cooperate with the home study, participate in family routines, and be kind. I wrote that I will not refer to Karen as mom, that I do not consent to any adoption, and that this boundary is not negotiable. I wrote that I'm open to a relationship on my terms, at my pace. Then I signed it with my slanted teenage signature that always looks a bit apologetic. I sent it to Ms. Fletcher. She replied, received. Thank you, Avery. When Dad called that night, his voice was careful, like he was walking across ice. Ms. Fletcher told me she spoke with you, he said. She said you contributed thoughtfully. She also said labels aren't required, I said flatly. He sighed. Yeah, she did. So why are we still doing this dance? I'm not asking you to call her mom anymore, he said, and I heard the strain in the words. I told Karen to drop it. We'll focus on routines, on the house, on Theo's schedule. That's it. I wanted to believe him. I really did. And the petition? A longer pause. I'll tell our lawyer not to draft anything else. It was premature. Premature implies later, I said. He exhaled. It was a mistake, he corrected. I'm sorry. Something inside me eased, but not all the way. There are sorries that glue things, and sorries that just sit there like stickers. Tuesday came like a train you can hear for miles. I wore jeans and a plain sweater so I wouldn't feel like a prop. I got to Dad's early, sat on the couch with Theo, and built a lopsided block tower. He was in a mood, sticky with yogurt and joy. Avy, look. He knocked the tower over and squealed. My heart melted like it always does with him. He sat in my lap and patted my cheek and said, Mama says be nice to Ms. Fletcher, and I swallowed 1,000 feelings and said, we're all going to be nice. At 10 on the nose, the doorbell rang. Ms. Fletcher looked exactly like a caseworker in a movie. Neutral cardigan, professional tote, polite smile that didn't show teeth. She shook everyone's hand, crouched to say hi to Theo, then stood and took out a notebook. Thank you for having me. I'll be here about an hour. I'd like to begin with a brief walkthrough of the home, and then have short individual chats, if that's okay. We did the tour. The house looked like a catalog. The throw pillows fluffed within an inch of their lives, fruit bowl with apples that I suspect had been polished. Ms. Fletcher asked straightforward questions. Where does everyone sleep? What are routines like? Any safety concerns? Karen sounded rehearsed, but mostly sane, talking about bedtime and preschool and chore charts. Dad stayed quiet, nodding as needed. I kept my arms loose at my sides so I didn't look defensive. Then Ms. Fletcher asked, how do you describe the relationship between you, Karen and Avery? Karen's eyes flicked to me and back. I could see her take a breath. I'm Mark's wife and Theo's mother, she said. I'm Avery's, her voice snagged. She swallowed. I'm Avery's stepmother. The word hung in the air like a truce flag. Ms. Fletcher nodded. Avery, I'm Mark's daughter, I said. I respect Karen as my stepmother and Theo's mom. Thank you, Ms. Fletcher said. She wrote something down. It felt, weirdly, like a victory that wasn't about winning so much as stopping a particular war. Half an hour later, Ms. Fletcher asked to speak to each of us alone. Theo went first and came back munching crackers, proud of himself for telling someone about dinosaurs. Karen went second. When she emerged, her smile was fixed but her hands trembled. Dad went in and came out rubbing his forehead. Then it was my turn. I sat with Ms. Fletcher in the kitchen where the light was sharp and honest. She asked me about school, about friends, about how I handle stress. I was honest in that teenager way where you're aware of how you sound and try to sound better. She asked how I felt about the potential of a 5-year-old joining the household. I feel worried for her, I said. I want her safe. I want any home she lands in to be honest. And how do you feel about this home? She asked, pen poised. Capable, I said after a second, but also performative. Like we set the table and forgot to cook the food. She smiled a little at that, not unkindly. At the end, she glanced at her notes. One more thing. There's a discrepancy I need to address while I'm here. She flipped a paper. Mark, your father, provided an affidavit earlier describing your relationship with Karen. It used a term that doesn't align with what I'm hearing today. Heat climbed my neck. Yes, I said. I know. I will consider today's statements the most current, she said. And I will reflect your written preferences in my report. Thank you, I said, and meant it like prayer. When she left, the house released a breath. Dad walked me to the driveway. That went okay, he said, fragile. It went honest, I said. He swallowed. I read your statement, by the way. Ms. Fletcher wanted us all on the same page. He rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't realize you felt like you were being used. You didn't want to realize, I said. It wasn't cruel. It was just true. He nodded, eyes shiny in a way that scared me because crying dads feel like earthquakes. I'm trying. We stood there with the cicadas going full orchestra. Then Karen opened the door, stepped out onto the porch, and said, Avery, can I talk to you for a minute? My body wanted to say no. But the day was done, and the truth had been said. Okay. We stood at the bottom of the porch steps. Up close, the makeup she'd put on for Ms. Fletcher had faded a little, and there was a smudge near one eye like she'd touched it absent-mindedly. I'm sorry, she said. Not like before. Not a sorry that asks for a favor. I mean, I'm sorry I tried to make you my solution. I wanted that word to fix something in me. What did you want it to fix? I asked carefully. She stared at the hydrangeas like maybe they'd answer. When I was 19, I had a baby, she said, voice tinier than I'd ever heard it. A little boy. I placed him for adoption. Open adoption, but his family moved, and I haven't heard from them in years. There's a hole in me the size of his name. She swallowed, page turning, breath catching. I wanted you to fill it. The ground shifted under me in a different way. Not to excuse anything, but to explain why she clung to Mom like a life raft. I pictured 19-year-old Karen in a hospital bed, signing papers with swollen hands. My throat went thick. I'm sorry, I said quietly. That's a lot. She nodded, blinked fast. It doesn't make what I did right. It just makes it why. She exhaled. I'll tell our lawyer to shred everything. I think I needed Ms. Fletcher to tell me no. We stood there in the sticky late afternoon light, not hugging, not fighting, just breathing. Then my phone buzzed with a text that turned my stomach inside out. From a number saved as unknown. Again, I must have seen it somewhere before. It was short, so short it took my brain a second to process. We need to talk about how long your dad and Karen were together before the divorce. I stared at it, the words going brighter and brighter, like a warning flare. Because if that was true, if their start date wasn't what I thought, then this whole family narrative wasn't just aspirational. It might be built on a lie older than me saying no to a word. That text sat on my screen like a live wire. We need to talk about how long your dad and Karen were together before the divorce. My heart thudded so hard I almost didn't hear my mom calling me from the hallway, asking if I wanted pasta or just to scavenge the fridge like a raccoon. I answered something automatic and kept staring at the words. The number wasn't Ms. Fletcher's. Different area code. I scrolled up to check if we'd texted before. Blank thread. I typed, "Who is this?" and hovered over send, then deleted it. I typed again, "I don't talk to random numbers." Deleted that too. Before I could overthink it into dust, the bubbles appeared. "It's Tasha. I'm Karen's sister. I got your number from Mark's phone a while back. I shouldn't text you, but I'm doing it anyway." I just sat. Tasha. The name Karen always says like an apology and a warning. The sister whose 5-year-old might end up living in their house. The one this whole home study show is supposedly about. "Why are you texting me?" I sent, fingers buzzing. She replied fast. "Because I saw something I can't unsee. And because I don't trust what Karen is telling the evaluator. If you give me 20 minutes, I'll explain. I'll meet you somewhere public. Bean Barn on Maple?" I could have said no. I probably should have. But the truth is, curiosity and dread are the same shape in your stomach. 15 minutes later, I was on my bike, pedaling to the coffee shop with my hood up and my brain inventing scenarios like a slot machine. Bean Barn was half full. Students in sweatshirts, a guy with a laptop and headphones, a couple whispering over a single muffin like it was their last meal. A woman in a denim jacket waved from a corner table. I recognized her jawline even before I got close. Karen has that same stubborn set to her chin when she wants something. Tasha looked older than Karen, darker hair pulled back in a messy bun, a tiredness that read as permanent. "Hi," she said softly. "Avery." "Yeah." I slid into the chair across from her. My hands were a little clammy. I tucked them under my thighs. "So why am I here?" Her eyes flicked to the window, then back. "Because you're being used as a story prop. And because if anyone should get the truth, it's you." I bristled a little at the phrase, story prop. It was dead on, and I hated that it was dead on. "Okay." She took a breath. "I'm not going to sugarcoat. Karen is my sister. I love her. She has a big heart and a hole in it. She wants to fill that hole with family. Sometimes she decides the family before the people do." Tasha folded her hands tightly. "Your dad and Karen, their timeline isn't what they tell people." My stomach slid sideways. Meaning? "Meaning I have photos of them together before your dad moved out," she said, and she was already pulling her phone from her pocket, scrolling fast. She turned the screen. A selfie outside Dottie's diner. Of all places, both of them leaning in, faces too close for just friends, the kind of glow people have when something new belongs to only them. The timestamp punched me in the throat. It was 3 months before my parents told me they were separating. I swallowed hard. That could be. I couldn't find the word. Harmless? Innocent? It didn't look innocent. She swiped again. Another photo. A street fair, Dad's hand on Karen's waist, her head tipped back laughing. The date was worse. I felt hot and cold at the same time. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. "Does my mom know?" I asked, the words coming out flat. "I don't know what your mom knows," Tasha said gently. "I know what I know, which is that Karen's we met later story is a lie. She asked me to keep it quiet. She told me it would look bad if it got out. I told her I didn't care how it looked. I cared about what it did to people. She told me I was being dramatic." The coffee shop noise blurred into a single hum. "Why tell me now?" I asked. "Why not the evaluator? Or my mom? Or a priest? Or literally anyone who isn't 17 and holding it together with bubble gum?" Her mouth twitched. "Because Karen asked me to write a letter for Ms. Fletcher saying she's been a stable force for teenagers. That she has experience parenting teens." Tasha's laugh was harsh and humorless. "Her experience is you. She pointed at you. And I can't, in good conscience, write a lie that uses you like a sentence." I stared at her, gutted and grateful and furious all at once. "Are you going to place Maya with them?" I asked, the name slipping out before I could stop it. Tasha flinched. "We don't say Maya's name in public," she muttered, then looked up. "I don't know. I'm sober 8 months. I'm trying to get stable housing and a job. The court, they want to see a plan." Karen looks like a plan. But plans can be made of paper, Avery. I don't want my daughter in a paper house. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope, the kind with a brassy clasp. It was worn at the edges like it had been moved from bag to drawer to bag again. "This is everything," she said. "Dates. Messages. A statement I wrote to Ms. Fletcher and never sent because I knew if I hit send, Karen would cut me off and I'd be alone again." Her voice wobbled. "I'm asking you to do what I wasn't brave enough to do." I stared at the envelope like it might explode. "You want me to give this to Ms. Fletcher?" "Yes," Tasha said. "And to read it first, so no one gets to tell you a version without letting you see the original." She pushed the envelope across the table. It bumped my fingers, soft and heavy and terrible. "You could have told my mom instead," I said, a little defensive. Tasha nodded. "I thought about it. But this is your fault line, Avery, not mine. You deserve first say in where it cracks." I sat a long time. Outside, a dog barked, a bus sighed at a stop sign. The barista frothed milk like a tiny thunderstorm. "I hate this," I said finally. It came out childish. "True. I know," she said. "If it helps, I don't want to hurt Karen. She's my sister." "Hurting and telling the truth aren't always the same," I said, surprising myself with the sentence. It sounded like something Ms. Fletcher would say. Tasha's eyes softened. "You're a good kid," she said. "I hope the adults catch up." When I got home, I didn't open the envelope right away. I set it on my desk and stared at it like you stare at the ocean in winter. My mom knocked and stuck her head in. "Do you want me in the room or out?" "In," I said, and she came and sat cross-legged on the rug, ready to catch whatever fell out. The envelope was full of paper noise. I slid out printed screenshots, a handwritten timeline, and that selfie I'd already seen. The statement was 4 pages, messy loops and crossouts. Tasha wrote about Karen's obsession with optics. She wrote about titles as performance. She wrote that Karen had begged her to tell the evaluator I called Karen Mom, so it would count toward our case. Tasha wrote that she told Karen no, and Karen didn't speak to her for a week. Halfway down page 3, there it was. Karen told me she and Mark had feelings long before we admitted it, and that they didn't want to hurt Avery's mom, but we deserve to be happy. I read that sentence 3 times. My throat hurt. My mom was very quiet, which is how I knew she was not okay. She reached for my hand and squeezed. "I'm here," she said. "I am right here." I nodded because if I tried to talk, I'd choke on something I couldn't swallow down. I texted Ms. Fletcher, "Can I drop something off for you?" From Tasha. "It's important." She responded almost immediately. "Yes. My office until 6. Thank you." On the drive over, Mom didn't fill the car with advice. She just drove, jaw set, one hand loose on the wheel. When we pulled into the parking lot, I sat for a second. "Do you want me to go in with you?" she asked. "No," I said. "I need to do this." She nodded. I went in. Ms. Fletcher's office was bland in that purposeful way. Neutral art. A plant that looked too alive to be real. Chairs that didn't hurt your back. She took the envelope, broke the clasp, and skimmed faster than I thought possible, whole pages with her eyes. When she finished, she set it down carefully and looked at me. "I'm sorry," she said, and the softness in her voice made everything wobble. "This confirms concerns I had. Thank you for bringing it to me." I didn't want to blow up anything if this was just messy history, I said. "But if they're lying, if they used me." "Honesty is not optional when a child's placement is at stake," she said. "The history by itself isn't determinative. The pattern of deception is. I will follow up." I nodded, throat thick. I stood, and she stood too. "Avery," she added, "I know you feel in the middle of adults' choices. You are allowed to set the edges of your peace." I went back to the car and got in and let my head drop back against the seat. Mom looked at me for a long time and then very quietly asked, "Do I need to call a lawyer?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe. I think Dad's going to be mad." "Let him be mad," she said, calm as rain. "He's a grown man. You're a kid. If his anger outweighs your safety and truth, that's information." That night, Dad called and asked if I could come by the next day to talk. His voice had that electric crackle of someone who knows the storm is already here. I said yes. When I showed up, Karen was in the kitchen, eyes puffy, a dish towel twisted in her hands like a worry toy. Dad was pacing. He stopped when he saw me. Ms. Fletcher called me. He said, no hello. She said Tasha provided a packet. She said you gave it to her. I did, I said. I could feel my pulse in my wrists. Because it's the truth. He closed his eyes a second. Can we not do this in absolutes? The truth is messy. People are messy. That doesn't mean you get to rearrange it, I said. Did you cheat on Mom with Karen before the divorce? Silence is an answer. He didn't look at me. He looked at the countertop. Then he nodded, a quick, small thing like maybe I wouldn't see it if it was small. Yes, he said, so quiet I almost missed it. I'm not proud. I thought we were. Your mother and I were already broken. That doesn't make it okay. I'm sorry. I breathed out through my nose so I wouldn't cry. It came out shaky anyway. You lied to me, I said. Not just about the label. About everything. I lied to myself, he said. His voice sounded threadbare. I told myself it was gentle not to tell you. I told myself it would only hurt you to know. Karen made this sound like a hiccup that was a sob. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. I wanted to fix it by making a family that felt bigger than the mistake. I stared at her, and it felt like looking at a collage. Pieces that didn't belong together that someone had glued into a picture. You can't fix a broken window by drawing a happy house on it, I said. You have to sweep up the glass. We're going to, Dad said quickly. We'll be honest with Ms. Fletcher. I'll tell her we misrepresented. You already did, I said. She knows. She has the dates. She has the letter. You don't get to control the narrative anymore. Karen flinched like I'd slapped her. You always think I'm trying to control you, she whispered. I'm trying to save something. Stop trying to save it with me, I said. Save it with the truth. I gathered my bag. Where are you going? Dad asked. Home, I said. I have an English paper. And I'm tired. He nodded, and I left. On the porch, my phone vibrated. A number I didn't know. Again. We should talk, the text said. I think Karen reached out to me because she wanted to prove something. My name is Ben. I think I'm the baby she placed for adoption. I stared at the screen, wind lifting the hair at the back of my neck, the hydrangeas whispering in the dark. Because apparently the hole in Karen's story wasn't the only one about to open. I couldn't stop staring at that text. My name is Ben. I think I'm the baby she placed for adoption. The words didn't make sense at first. They looked like a scam or a bad joke, but then my stomach flipped. Karen had admitted it to me, that she'd had a baby when she was 19. But now that baby was texting me. I typed, how do I know this is real? Ben replied almost immediately, I can send you a photo. It's from the one time we met. She might have told you about it. It was at a park. There was a duck pond. A few seconds later, a picture popped up. Karen, in a cardigan, eyes red and puffy, sitting on a park bench. Next to her was a boy, tall, nervous, with the exact same eyes. He had Karen's nose too. My throat closed. I'm not lying, he added. She asked me not to contact you until she was ready. But I think you deserve to know. She wanted me to write a letter for the evaluator, saying I feel bonded with her. I couldn't. That's when she stopped replying to me. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to block him and pretend this wasn't another bomb in my family. Another part of me, the bigger part, wanted to know everything. Can we meet? I asked, before I could second-guess myself. Somewhere public. He said yes. We picked the same cafe where I'd met Tasha. Bean Barn. Tomorrow at 4. That night, I told my mom. She didn't even pretend to be surprised. She just closed her eyes for a moment and said, You want me nearby? Yes, I admitted. Maybe wait in the car. She nodded. Done. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo. Karen and Ben, side by side, strangers who shared the same blood. And all I could think was, Karen didn't just lie to Ms. Fletcher. She's been lying to all of us for years. And now her past was standing right at the edge of mine. Bean Barn again. My mom idled in the parking lot like quiet backup, and I walked in to meet a 19-year-old who had Karen's eyes. Ben stood when I approached, awkward and polite. Thank you, he said, offering a hand. I shook it because my mom raised me with manners, even in chaos. He told me about the park meeting, duck pond, paper cups of lemonade, Karen crying like a flood, and also checking her reflection in her camera. He showed me the messages. Can you write a letter saying you feel bonded? And his reply, I can't say what isn't true yet. Then nothing from her for weeks. I don't want to wreck your life, he said. I just want to be real in mine. I get that, I said because I did. She tries to turn people into proof. The words came out before I could tidy them. He winced with recognition and then looked relieved not to have to defend her. We talked about nothing for a minute. His classes, my choir audition, the fact he's terrible at parallel parking. Human things kept it from being only heavy. When we left, we didn't promise anything big. He asked, very gently, "If you talk to her, will you tell her I'm not angry?" I'm careful. It was such a kind sentence that I had to look away. Back home, my phone buzzed with Miss Fletcher's name. "Avery," she said. "I'm filing an addendum about misrepresentations. Also, have you authorized any school references?" "What?" I sat up. "No. There's a letter from your counselor praising Karen's maternal leadership. If that doesn't reflect your experience, I need clarity." 5 minutes later, I was at school with my mom, my counselor blinking at us over a stack of essays. "I'm sorry," she said, realizing fast. "I wrote about attendance at conferences, not about your identity. I'll correct it." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. Clean apologies are rare here. That evening, another text from Miss Fletcher. "I will be making an unannounced evening visit this week to observe routine. Please don't alert the applicants." My chest did the elevator drop thing. I texted Mom, then grabbed my hoodie and went to Dad's under the cover of dropping by. The house looked like actual life. Crayons on the coffee table, a sock on a chair, Theo marching dinosaurs up the stairs. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Miss Fletcher stepped in with her neutral cardigan and a kind smile. "Don't change anything," she said. "I'm just observing." We tried not to perform. We failed a little, then stopped trying and started breathing. And then the doorbell rang again. Tasha stood on the porch holding a tote with a pink rabbit ear sticking out. "Maya can't sleep without this," she said, then saw Miss Fletcher and went pale. "Oh, stay," Miss Fletcher said. "This is part of reality." It was, right up until we realized reality had gone too quiet and Theo was gone. The back door cracked open like a secret. We fanned out into the yard, calling softly so we wouldn't scare him deeper into the dark. "Theo," Karen's voice wobbled. The porch light made a tiny halo that stopped at the hydrangeas. I crouched by the biggest bush and heard a small hiccup breath. "Bunny fell," a whisper said. Everyone got big. "I found Bunny," I said, lowering my voice like a lamp. "He wants the good pillow spot." A sticky hand slipped into mine. We walked back like dinosaurs, tiny stomps, into the light. Karen made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. Dad pressed his hand to his chest. Tasha exhaled like a tire slowly deflating. "MS." Fletcher didn't smile. She noted, then put her pen away like she'd already seen enough that mattered. Headlights swept the driveway. Another knock. Not Miss Fletcher returning. She was still right there. A man with a folder and a windbreaker. "Is this the Miller residence? I need Karen Miller for service of documents." The kitchen filled with paper minutes later. Dad read out loud. "Temporary guardianship hearing. Moved up to Friday morning." His voice thinned. "Objection filed by the child's father, requesting placement with his sister during investigation, citing evidence of misrepresentation to officials." Tasha leaned on the counter like her bones forgot how to hold her. "Of course he woke up now," she said softly. Karen sat down hard. "I did this," she whispered. "I wanted to look better than I am." "Not just you," Dad said, which was both true and a poor comfort. "Nothing staged," I said, surprising myself with how steady it came out. "No more letters you asked for. No more aspirational anything. Tell the truth. All of it." Dad nodded like surrender. Karen rubbed her face. "I'll call Miss Fletcher," she said. "I'll say we're withdrawing if she recommends it. I won't make Maya part of my need." It was the first sentence she'd said that was clearly about Maya. Miss Fletcher closed her notebook. "I'll reflect tonight's events," she said. "There's warmth here. There's also repair to do." After she left, the house hummed with tired. Theo slept with the rabbit under his chin. Tasha held a mug like it was a hand. Dad paced, stopped, paced again. My phone buzzed. "Are you okay, Ben?" It felt strange and comforting that someone outside the house asked. Before I could respond, Dad looked up. "We have 48 hours, he said. "I'm calling a therapist. We're going in honest." Thursday was a blur of doing and undoing. Dad scheduled family therapy, real therapy, not the kind with a script. I told him I wouldn't attend without my mom. To his credit, he rescheduled to include both households. One tiny repair among many. Karen went quiet in a different way. No pleading, no bargaining. She texted me a single sentence. I won't ask you for the word again. It felt like an apology without hooks. Tasha showed up with a folder of sobriety paperwork and a clear-eyed speech she practiced with me at the table. Say what's true, I told her. Even if your voice shakes. Mine did too. Ms. Fletcher called in the afternoon. I'll be at the hearing, she said. My report will note both the misrepresentations and the strengths I observed. I'm recommending counseling as a condition and a phased plan if placement is considered later. Will the judge listen to me? I asked. Yes, she said. If you want to speak, you can. Or submit a statement. Either is fine. I drafted a statement on my bed with my mom sitting quietly nearby, the way she does, present without steering. I wrote that I love my brother, that I respect Karen as my father's wife and Theo's mother, that I will not call her mom and will not consent to any adoption. That titles aren't proof, consistency is. I sent a copy to Ms. Fletcher. She replied, clear, grounded. Thank you. Evening brought another small fire. My counselor's addendum hit MS. Fletcher's inbox correcting that earlier letter. Academic involvement noted, maternal title not assessed. Clean. I texted my counselor a thank you and got a heart back. Adults mending their own messes. New. Ben checked in again. Do you want me there? Not in the courtroom, just in the hallway. I stared at the dots, then typed, maybe. Only if you want to be, not as proof of anything. He sent a thumbs up and a got it. By midnight, the house was quiet and my brain was loud. I kept replaying every time Karen had put a triumphal ribbon around my life and called it love. But also, the way she found her son's voice when Theo hid. People are complicated. Maybe that's the only sentence worth writing twice. Courthouses always smell like paper and cold air. We sat in a row, Dad in a suit that fit like guilt, Karen twisting a tissue, Tasha with a clear plastic folder of milestones, me with my statement folded and refolded until the crease went white. The judge was a woman with steady eyes and a coffee mug that said consider. She listened more than she talked. Ms. Fletcher went first, her voice measured. The applicants demonstrate warmth and structure with the 3-year-old, she said. However, there were material misrepresentations regarding the teenager's relationship to the step-parent and a concerning pattern of sourcing letters for optics rather than substance. I recommend counseling, monitored transparency, and delaying any placement decision until trust is rebuilt. The child's father's attorney spoke next, citing the misrepresentation like it was a neon sign. He pushed for placement with the father's sister during investigation. Tasha's jaw clenched. When it was her turn, she stood and looked directly at the judge. I love my daughter, she said. I'm sober 8 months. I am not stable yet. I want her safe while I get there. I asked my sister to be a plan, but we can't build on a picture. I want a real house, not a paper one. If that means she goes to her aunt on her dad's side while we fix this, I will not fight that. But please give us a path that isn't punishment. Give us work to do. Karen spoke. I watched the battle in her face between performance and truth won by a squeak. I wanted titles to heal me, she said, voice small. I asked for letters. I called what I wanted aspirational and tried to make it real by saying it out loud. I'm sorry. To Avery. To Ms. Fletcher. To this court. She didn't cry in the pretty way. She cried in the blotchy way. It felt human. Dad admitted the affair. He didn't justify. He said, we broke trust once. We broke it again on paper. We are willing to do whatever the court requires to rebuild. The judge sipped from consider. She looked at me. Avery, you may read your statement or speak. Your choice. I stood and my knees shook and I spoke anyway. I said what I'd written, that I care about my brother, that I respect Karen as my stepmother and Theo's mother, that I won't call her mom or be adopted, that I'm willing to cooperate with the process but not the performance. I need my words to be my words. I finished. Not a script someone gave me. The judge nodded once, noted something. After a pause that felt like a held breath, she ruled. Temporary placement with the father's sister for 60 days while both sides complete counseling and a follow-up study. Unsupervised visits for Tasha as approved by her program. Weekly supervised visits for Dad and Karen with a clear prohibition on pressuring me or using me as proof in any context. She echoed Ms. Fletcher. Labels cannot be compelled, and directed a formal retraction of any inaccurate affidavits. It wasn't victory. It wasn't defeat. It was a lane. In the hallway after, we stood in a loose, careful cluster. Tasha hugged me, fast and fierce. "Thank you," she whispered, "for telling the truth out loud." Karen approached and stopped a respectful distance away. "Your words were yours," she said, eyes swollen. "I heard them. I won't ask for the title again." Then a voice behind me. "Avery?" I turned. Ben, shifting from foot to foot, hoodie sleeves tugged over his hands. Karen saw him and went still. For a heartbeat, I thought she'd run. She didn't. She just stood, shaking, with her eyes wide open. They sat on a bench under a potted tree that had seen 1,000 courthouse conversations. I stayed far enough away to give privacy, close enough to step in if the ground shifted. Karen didn't reach for him. She didn't ask for a photo. She didn't say prove even once. I heard fragments. "I'm sorry. I wanted you to be my clean page. You are not a second chance. You're a person." Ben's shoulders slowly dropped from his ears. When they stood, he didn't hug her, but he didn't flinch either. Gentle matters. On the drive home with my mom, I let my forehead rest against the window. "It wasn't the outcome I imagined," I said, "but maybe it's the one that stops the pretending." "That's a good outcome," she said, one hand on the wheel, one calm in her lap. Pretending is heavier than grief. Over the next weeks, tiny repairs. Family therapy where a professional made us put our words in I sentences, and we all hated it, and also needed it. Karen texted me photos of Theo drawing dinosaurs with too many legs and never attached them to a request for a title. Dad didn't use me as his go-between with Ms. Fletcher. He communicated like a grown-up. My counselor's corrected letter sat snugly in the file, like a small brick in a stronger wall. A month in, Karen asked if I would come to the park, not the duck pond, a different one, for 15 minutes. "I want to give you something," she said. I brought my mom. She sat on a far bench and pretended to read. Karen handed me a small envelope. Inside was the shredded remains of a petition I recognized from her binder months ago, step-parent adoption, draft. Alongside it, a note. "I released the picture I tried to stick you inside. I'll learn to love the frame we actually have." Kay. I didn't hug her. I didn't say anything perfect. I just nodded. Sometimes nods are the only true sentence. When Maya's 60 days ended, the court scheduled another hearing. Tasha was still sober, still working her plan, still asking for help before she was drowning. The judge extended temporary placement with the paternal aunt for 30 more days with increased visitation for Tasha and a warmer note in her voice. The lane didn't widen yet, but it didn't close. Last night, I sat at my desk and finally wrote this the way I wish I'd written it the first time. Honest, messy, in my own words. At dinner that kicked this all off, when Karen said I should accept she's my real mom, I snapped and told her she isn't and never will be. I meant it. I still mean it. She's my stepmother. She is Theo's mother. She is trying. I can hold both truth and trying at the same time. Now my dad's side says I embarrassed the family, delayed Maya's placement, hurt Karen when I could have played along. My mom says I protected myself and a future child from a paper house. Ms. Fletcher said my boundaries were appropriate. The judge ordered no more pressure.